Welcome. I'm Bertram de Souza, veteran Mahoning Valley journalist who has covered federal, state, and local politics for over 40 years. I'm the retired editorial page editor and Sunday columnist for the now closed Youngstown Vindicator and host of the Scribbler podcast. By any fair standard, Thursday night's presidential debate on CNN was a disaster for President Joe Biden, a Democrat seeking a second four-year term in November. By contrast, it was a great night for Republican Donald Trump, who wants to return to the White House after having served one term as president from 2017 through 2020. But just how bad was it for Biden, and how good was it for Trump? We've invited Sharif Mansour, a speech and debate coach in Northeast Ohio, to give us his objective evaluation of the performances of the two men. In part two of this podcast, we'll hear from veteran political observers. Thank you, Sharif, for joining me today to talk about last night's presidential debate. Before we go into some of the details and what occurred, I'd like to start by asking you to tell us a little about yourself, including your role as a speech and debate coach.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here. I am a immigrant to the U.S. My family immigrated here in 1991. We've been in Northeast Ohio ever since. I had the privilege of going to Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy for high school, where I participated in both speech and debate as a member of the forensics team. A few years ago, there was a need for my local high school team to have a new coach, and I swore up and down to them that I'm not qualified for such an august position. Nonetheless, some men have greatness thrust upon them, and I am one of those. And so I get to join this wonderful company of speech and debate coaches and students. I'm a proud member of the Eastern District of Ohio. Just came back from nationals actually this past Saturday. And happy to be here. In terms of education, I do have a undergrad in history and then a master's degree in secondary social studies education. I am an avid news junkie and generally keep pretty close tabs on American politics. But I suppose that when one is an immigrant, one is very interested in what's happening in the workings of government.
I was about to say most immigrants have taken much more greater interest in politics than other people. You know, when I reached out and was searching for a speech and debate coach / judge to talk about Thursday's night's presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I, like a lot of people, thought it was going to be a very close, debate, that it was going to be a toss-up. And so I was trying to avoid getting the political spin doctors on as guests, which we usually do, because they just repeat what their candidates say. And so I thought, I'd get an objective view from somebody who knows how to judge debates. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you saw, it didn't work out that way at all. I mean, there is no way to objectively say, that Joe Biden won in any way. So before we go into what you saw and what you got a sense of and how you viewed the debate last night through your lens, talk about your overall impression of the debate, your overall impression of what occurred last night, on CNN's stage.
The problem with our national debate forum is that it's not a great way to do debate. In the classic form of debate, we have one topic of debate, and that topic we are going to excavate for the better part of 45 minutes. We're going to have two people who have studied one issue intensely. They have spent weeks, if not months, pouring into it, getting outside counsel, reading up about it. When two students go in to debate whether there should be open borders or not, philosophically speaking, they are prepared to discuss the philosophies behind open borders. When they're there to discuss term limits for the Supreme Court, they're prepared for this one thing. When we do a general debate between two presidential candidates, what we find is that ultimately, at its best, they have a surface level knowledge of all these issues. And we
Right.
have to trust that if elected, they're going to hire the right people underneath them who really understand the specifics of all these issues. That's not what we saw yesterday, right? Because we're asking for shallow on a variety of different issues, we saw two candidates struggle to do this. But also, even if they were truly proficient, we don't give them the time to delve deep into policy and philosophy that drives their political leanings and their ideals and their ideas. The 2-1-1-1 model that they used yesterday was better than many that I've seen.
Right.
The opportunity to give a 2 minute for opening statement, and then to have somebody give a counter, and then the opportunity to rebut them, and then a minute of the moderator's discretion as to who's going to talk a little bit more, is a decent model. But boy, would I rather see them just take, we're going to spend the next half hour talking about abortion. We're going to spend the next
Sure.
half hour talking about international trade, which again, two very broad issues. We could
Right.
easily spend half an hour on each of them and have it be more structured. But I'm also not convinced after listening to these two presidential candidates, these two president and former president debate yesterday. I'm not sure that they could speak intelligently for 6, 7, 8 minute stretches on any single topic.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was watching it last night. There is no doubt that President Joe Biden imploded, unfortunately. Um, but I was thinking about what you're talking about, the actual debate forum. Um, the U.S. system of government, which is the three co-equal branches of government, is very different to the parliamentary, like in Britain, where the
Definitely.
prime minister actually goes to the House of Commons. And there is that kind of a debate because he is challenged by opposition. He's challenged by those who are opposed to him. He's questioned by members of his own party. And he
And his
has
own
to stand up,
coalition.
yes, and he has to stand up there and actually engage. And then I've become sort of I'm addicted to that. So questions to the prime minister has become my weekly thing when they're in session, because I really enjoy that kind of thing. But presidents in this country don't do that. Once they're in the White House, they're not debating anybody.
Correct.
They're sitting there, they're making policy decisions based on advice from their staff. Go ahead.
Correct. And historically, the sitting president has done particularly poorly in the first debate of any election period because they're unaccustomed to being challenged. Like you
Exactly.
said, they've been in a room surrounded by like-minded individuals whose job is to do what the president asks them to do.
Yes.
Their job is determined by their efficiency in following his orders. All of a sudden, now the president finds himself on stage, and 4 years ago, President Trump found himself on stage with a handful of people who are throwing barbs at him and challenging everything that he has to say. And that must come as a surprise for somebody who has spent 4 years more or less hearing what they wanted to hear.
Sure. And also in the United States, the closest thing a president has to where somebody's actually challenging him is the press conference, the White House press conference, where reporters are able to, but that's at the discretion of the president. And if a president chooses not to have a lot of press conferences, there's nothing we can do to force him to do that. And I think that too adds to what I think occurred last night, where Biden has been so sort of isolated. I'm not saying isolated in the sense
Insulated.
insulated, right, a great word, in the White House, that yes, last night when confronted with these kinds of questions that he was given, he got lost. So when you began watching, what were you looking for? What other things were you focusing on? And then we'll continue. Go ahead.
When I am judging a debate, when I hope anybody is judging a debate, they're looking for a handful of things. The first, obviously, is that the debater has their facts straight, or at least if they are presenting things that may not be provable or are not going to be proven in the round, that they're going to present them with conviction and confidence. So for President Biden, I was hoping for conviction and for confidence. You're also looking for poise. You're looking for clarity of speech. You don't want somebody who's stumbling over the words. And is in these aspects that President Biden really failed yesterday. I counted 3 individual lapses of memory, or where he just sort of had to stop and really gather his thoughts. And even when he gathered his thoughts, he did not always come back on the same train that he had been progressing on. I don't say this as an insult to the president. The president is the oldest person to ever run for president. Um, but he did not come off very well at all yesterday. And it made it easier for his opponent, for President Trump, to be able to come in and say, blithely, I don't know what he just said there. I don't think he knows what he just said there. And in that sense, President Trump, who was a bad debater, but a great argumentarian, was
Yeah,
able to pounce and make himself look better, or at least younger and more coherent and more um, aware of the topic at hand. Um, and I think it made me just think yesterday that America would actually prefer a good argumentarian to a good debater. A good debater is going to stay in their lane, is going to be more or less respectful, is going to mind their time and their manners, and any shots they take are going to be rather tongue in cheek. Uh, President Trump is many things, but not subtle. And
right.
he enjoyed the shots that he was able to take at President Biden.
When we had exchanged texts and prior to today, you had laid out certain guidelines that you were going to be watching for, and how you were going to sort of judge according to those. So, were you able to do that? And could you sort of expound on how you judged each of the candidates according to the categories that you laid out?
So the big things are presentation, preparedness, the rebuttals, and their ability to stick to their main talking points. Um, in terms of presentation, I felt that President Trump dominated the debate. I think President Biden did his best work when he was angry and speaking off the cuff, which I imagine the people in his corner did not necessarily want him speaking
Mhm.
off the cuff all that much. Preparedness, I feel like they both did their best. They both took this seriously. They both came out with prepared points that they tried to get to as best they could. Um, for rebuttals, I actually felt that President Biden was able to do better in terms of arguing against the points that President Trump was making, uh, because President Trump tended to go to his winning talking points. When there was a question asked about the cost of childcare,
Yes,
uh, President Trump pointedly did not address or answer the question. Now, admittedly, when President Biden retorted, he spent maybe 30 seconds of his minute retort talking about something else also. But the commentator, the moderator, commented that President Trump had spent the first 67 seconds of his 120-second response about childcare, not talking about childcare. President Trump kept going, playing to his base and playing the hits.
right.
Illegal immigrants, open borders,
Uh-huh.
our international reputation. Um, so, and in that sense, he did a good job of winning by sticking to his talking points. You want your candidate, you want your debater to stick to their script, stick to their agenda, and try to steer all conversations back to an area of strength. You saw President Biden try to do the same thing when the opportunity arose, and he would steer things back to, well, this guy get rid of abortion. His judges, because he feels that abortion is a winning topic for him, in the same that President Trump feels that open borders are a winning
Right.
topic for him. So both candidates tried to do what they could to bring the debate back to fertile grounds or areas where they have an advantage. But yeah, in general, we're looking for presentation, preparedness, rebuttals, and the ability to stick to your talking points.
And in all those categories, if you listen to the postmortem last night, it's very clear that even Democrats believe that Biden failed miserably.
With
That
his first answer, President Biden hit the panic button, or rather, the Democratic Party began hitting the panic
yes,
button.
yes,
Because on the first question, you would think with the first question, at the very least, he is still not mentally fatigued. He should be most
right,
prepared. He's fresh. on the first answer, he blanked and had that long kind of, I'm looking for my words, I'm fumbling for it, and ultimately I don't find it. And I think because of how decent, I will say decent, not good, his State of the Union was, I think people anticipated that that's more of the President Biden we were going to see.
Right.
But at the State of the Union, nobody's arguing back. You might get booed, you might get ovations,
Right.
but I don't think he was
But you
prepared.
at the State of the Union, you own the stage.
Correct.
Here
Yep.
you were sharing the stage. You're
Yes.
sharing the stage with somebody, number one, who, despite everybody making fun of Donald Trump's appearance, when you put a man who, even though his skin color might be orange, when you put him against a very pale white man, the contrast was so telling because it made Biden look even older than
The
he is.
Orange Man and the Cadaver.
Yeah, that's and I don't know if you watched the movie Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
I kept thinking about that movie when I kept watching Biden, and it's really crude, but that's all I could think about was, my God, why didn't they even give him some makeup to give him some color just because of, Donald Trump, obviously that's not his natural coloring, whatever he does to make himself look like
A
the way
lot of
he does.
bronzer. A lot of
Exactly.
bronzer.
Exactly. But it worked
Yeah.
because the contrast was so stunning.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that that was President Biden with the level of makeup that his team felt that they was appropriate. Again, President Biden has a lot of people around him, and they may be many things, but this is not their first rodeo.
Right.
They know what they need to do to prepare, and whatever he looked like yesterday is probably the best that they could do, the best that they were able to do in the time allotted to them, which seemed like it was plenty of time.
And now, even during the debate, when they took breaks, his Biden's people were going around to reporters talking about how, well, the reason his voice is so quiet and he's hoarse is because he's had a cold.
Mhm.
I wondered why, when Biden went to the lectern and stood there at the very beginning, I wonder why he didn't just say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to have a difficulty speaking because I've just been fighting a cold all week," and and at least make that known, because I kept texting to Taji and to others saying he has an old man's voice.
Can't hear him. I can't hear him.
Exactly. And if you're talking about his age and you're trying to prove that he's not an old man, which he is, if you talk about this old man and you're trying to prove that even though he might be old in age, he's still a vibrant guy and he's still a vibrant leader. If you cannot, sort of articulate, and if you cannot be heard, it sort of plays into that whole idea that, my God, this guy's really old. And
Yep.
projection is very much part of debate, right? How you project.
Your presentation. Absolutely. Again, how you look, how you sound, the quality of your voice, all of that matters.
So as you went through and as you were trying to watch, they took a couple of breaks. And the question that came to mind when they took these breaks was, if you had a team that was debating, and I don't know whether they have breaks during debate, the debates.
Not usually.
But if there was a way to sort of signal to your team that was imploding what they needed to do, what advice would you have given Biden during that first break, as to how to recover?
Yeah, I felt like President Biden did his best when he was goaded and when he became angry. And when President Trump made a comment about him being the least liked
Yes.
president in history by the military, President Biden got angry because his now
Yes.
deceased son is a veteran, and that was when he spoke with the most fire and the most conviction, and his answer was as robust as I could possibly hope for from him. And what I would tell him if I was his coach, I would say, "Hey, listen, I need you to stay mad. I need you to be like the
Yes.
Hulk and the Avengers. You don't get mad, you stay mad." It is obvious these two hate each other. Like they do
Right.
not want to be on stage with each other. They cannot believe that this other person has a chance to beat them in November. And I think most politicians have a distinct level of ego, but these two specifically, because now it's the second election in a row that they are going up against each other, they really have a strong vitriol towards each other. And I would try to pull that out of President Biden and be like, listen, that man right there, you are telling us is the most evil being on the planet. You are all that stands between us and certain destruction. I need that to come out of you. I need
Yeah.
you to
Yeah.
argue with emotion and with passion and with conviction and make those people out there, make the American people believe you when you tell us this man is a danger.
And it also struck me that, Donald Trump, ever since he got onto the political scene in 2016, made it very clear that there are no rules that apply to him. That
Correct.
he does not follow, that he has no shame, and he'll say and do whatever he needs to do to get ahead. And I was wondering, because you're right about Biden. When he got angry, he was making points, but the problem was he wants to be viewed as a decent human being compared to this evil,
The
person.
alley cat, this alley cat.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, no, that is a generational thing. And sort of, I kept thinking that Biden's Catholicism to turn the other cheek seems to be, sort of governing the way he sort of responds to Trump, instead of goading Trump the way Trump goads Biden. Instead of saying liar, 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 just keep constantly interrupting, doing anything you can the way Trump does. But
Sure.
Biden still thinks that being decent is presidential. And I don't know whether that applies anymore in America after the way Donald Trump has redefined politics.
There's a stand-up comedian. His name is Shane Gillis. Funny guy, inappropriate many times, but he talks about how President Trump keeps going up there and debating these political nerds who are expecting it to be a normal debate or at
Yep.
least a
Yep.
traditional argument, and that's not who he is at all. Yeah, he is up there. He is interrupting. He is crass. He has a very loose association with what is truth and what is real. And he will say what feels right in the moment, regardless of the accuracy or the veracity of statements. He doesn't care. And to have an opponent who is going to sit there and try to be, like you said, kind and congenial and say, well,
Mhm.
I don't know about that. Um, it's really not going to play very well. And I, I don't know if it's necessarily the sort of presidential debate that I want to see, but I feel like if President Biden wants to be successful, he might have to get down in the mud and get dirty.
Exactly.
Uh, and if maybe that's a situation where if you're his team, you tell him like you don't refer to him as Donald or you don't refer to him as Trump, and you refer to him as the convicted felon on the stage with me, and you're
Exactly.
constantly reminding people who Donald Trump is.
And there are ways to do it. I mean, so Joe Biden could easily have continued on that line about, the convictions, instead of having sex with a porn star. And Biden could have pursued that, because I was thinking, okay, Biden can talk about his own marriage, can talk about the stability of his marriage, can talk about family, can talk about sharing his bed with his wife, and not ever paying to silence a porn star the way Donald Trump has done, or not having an affairs while he was married, and all of those things that would have resonated with the American people. Because what I have found as a political writer, for more than 40 years, is that, unfortunately, in American politics today, substance doesn't matter. And unfortunately, that's why I believe Donald Trump is so popular with his base and with the people who support him, is because they like the way he comes across. They like his fighting demeanor. They like the fact that, he's a pit bull, and sort of, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter if the things he says are lies. It doesn't matter if the things he says have no basis of fact. They don't care. And I'm wondering how in a debate, when you have that kind of sort of a situation, how somebody like Biden deals with that or overcomes that.
In a speech and debate situation, if you were arguing in Lincoln Douglas debate one-on-one with a judge, Donald Trump's strategy of personality and ego over substance would not fly because we have rules and expectations and decorum is richly prized. Um, there are some judges who might count a debater down for even their method of dress. Now, I don't support that, but that is how highly decorum is prized within the world of speech and debate.
Right.
But as you mentioned, that is not what America is looking for. America is almost watching to see if it's going to be Jerry Springer and Maury Povich today. What do we have? We're
Exactly.
here for the drama. And as an American, I got to tell you, I also enjoy the drama. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's like dessert. I'm gonna enjoy some ice cream tonight, and let's go Ben and Jerry and Joe and Donald. Let's go. I'm ready. Um,
And Biden's team knew how Trump behaves in debates, not only when he was debating others who were seeking the Republican in 2016, seeking the Republican nomination, and the nastiness, the way he criticized the other opponents, talked about their wives, about their families, and all of that. But if you remember when he debated Hillary Clinton, how he sort of loomed behind her and sort of while she was speaking, he was like, sort of like walking behind her, trying to intimidate her. So the Biden team knew what to expect. They knew that, he was going to make faces. They knew that he was going to, do all the kinds of things. And also, I think they didn't realize that this was going to be a split screen. So even when Trump was speaking, Biden had this dazed look in his eyes, and also he had his mouth open. And I texted somebody saying, "My God, I mean, perhaps he can't breathe because he has a cold or whatever, but be aware that the camera is still on you."
yeah. Yep. Um, I felt like the Biden team thought that they had won the pre-debate rule structure
Yeah,
by gaining the mute your mic when you're not speaking. But I
right,
think that worked against them because Donald Trump has no filter. He has no impulse control. And a lot of times, the dumbest, silliest, most soundbite worthy things that he says are in that moment when he wants to interrupt his opponent. He didn't have that today. Even if he wanted to be wrong, that's wrong,
right,
stupid over
right.
here. He didn't have that opportunity. And where Joe would have looked better by comparison,
Yeah.
he didn't have that option. And again, Joe Biden is thinking of this as a traditional debate. Again, in answer number one, he reminded us, I'm just Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania. A line that he uses in almost every
Yes,
speech and
yes,
almost every
yes.
debate because he's trying to paint himself as an everyman. Donald Trump, conversely, does not waste an opportunity to tell you that he is not every man.
Right.
He is special. He's smarter. He's
Yeah.
got the best words. He knows the best people. This and again in this particular conflation, Trump looks better.
And as all Trump has always displayed the arrogance of inherited wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And that has sort of governed his life, even though his supporters seem to think that he's one of them. He isn't. I don't believe, and I've said this to people, I don't believe Donald Trump has ever stood in line for anything. I don't
Correct.
believe Donald Trump has ever gone to a grocery store and to a checkout counter. And I don't believe Donald Trump has, when he wants to go to a restaurant, and at 11 o'clock at night, they keep the restaurant open for him at 11 o'clock at night. That is
Sure.
not how his supporters live their lives. His supporters have no idea what his life is like, and yet they support him because he has convinced them that he has their back. Go
He
ahead.
speaks like a blue collar American. Again,
Right.
he is rude and crude in that what I think they called it the locker room talk, or
Yep. Yep.
men on a job site sort of way, in this stereotypical way. But again, he sounds familiar to the ear. the way he peppers his speech with obscenities, the way he rolls his eyes.
Sure.
Again, he's reminiscent of somebody's wild uncle that you mostly just hang out with at Thanksgiving, and we know he's going to say a couple things that are probably racist, and the rest of us don't say. But there's Uncle Don again.
Yes.
He's out there talking about the illegal immigrants who are raping and killing. All right, Uncle Don, that's it's weird, but again, it's comfortable. Whereas Joe Biden, the politician, if there's anything all Americans agree on, is that we don't particularly like politicians.
And Joe Biden last night after the debate, posted stuff about, you can't win a debate when the other person is lying, and how do you overcome the guys who's lying? And he talked about how Donald Trump lies and all of that. And what Trump supporters have said constantly, consistently is all politicians lie. So, they just shrug that off.
Question two, I think, question one or two, President Biden claimed that inflation was already under like something crazy, like 10% under
Right.
President Trump, which is not accurate. And I commented, I'm like, well, I hate to call the president a liar, but I don't believe that his recollection of the start of inflation is accurate. I think
Right.
inflation absolutely began under President Biden. Now, if he wants to blame Trump era COVID policy for that, that's a different thing, but that's not what he said.
Right.
And now, as soon as President Biden is inaccurate or lying about anything, I think if I am a Trump-based supporter, I'm like, see, he does it too. You guys are only going to talk about the things that President Trump said wrong, but there's Joe going off, crazy Joe saying things that aren't true.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are kind of sitting here shrugging our shoulders.
As you went through, and I don't know what you do, what system you use when you judge a debate. Do you share the opinion of many that indeed Biden sort of lost big last night?
Absolutely. So when you're judging a debate, you're doing what's called flowing, right? Every time somebody makes an argument, I put that argument down on my piece of paper, I type it in my computer, and I wait to see how the opponent responds to it. Because in a debate, you must respond to every argument. If you don't respond to an argument, that says to me, the judge, you agree with what your opponent said on that point, and that point is going to then flow through to the end of the round and be an impact. So if then your opponent talks about key voting issues and he references, well, my contention one was not challenged by my opponent, therefore it should flow to the end of the round, and just based on that alone, I should win this debate. That might be the case. And one of the things you coach your debaters to do is everything they say must be responded to, even if it's just once. And like, I don't believe that is accurate. And then, I'm going to talk about it later. Then you have to talk about it later. But you're going to address it. In this particular scenario for yesterday's debate, I feel that with question one, President Biden lost. I'm not going to say necessarily that President Trump won. I don't know that President Trump has more people voting for him after yesterday's debate, but I legitimately, honestly, within me feel that there are fewer people that are going to vote for President Biden now. I think people who were on defense, leaning Biden, going like, yeah, I'll just go and I'll vote for him, are now maybe thinking, I'm not going to go. What am I going to vote for this idiot? I'm not going to vote for this joker.
Exactly.
This guy's senile. This guy's whatever. I'm not going to the polls. And these are people that both candidates need, but depending on how you're doing the math, it seems that President Biden cannot afford apathy. Voter apathy will crush the Biden campaign.
And because if you look at the polling as to voter intensity, Trump supporters have always been much more intense in their support of Trump than the Biden supporters have been in their support of Biden. And that has been consistent since 2016, and it has not changed. And you're right. That's where Biden needs the undecideds. Biden needs those who haven't made up their mind. Biden needs those who voted for other Republican candidates other than Trump. And you're right. Last night he failed to deliver to that. And
the two groups, in my personal opinion, that President Biden needs the most are former Nikki Haley voters who are the never Trump variety, who are going to go to the polls and they're going to fill out. They're going to vote for a lot of Republicans, but they might at the top of the ticket fill in Biden just to keep Trump off of it. Those are people he lost yesterday. And then the other group is people who are maybe voting for the first time or for the first presidential election over the past 4 years, people who turned 18 after the 2020 election. And these are people that they need a reason to go out and vote for President Biden. And I'm not sure that he gave them reasons yesterday.
Well, the only hope that I think the Biden campaign has is that a lot of young people who are voting age didn't watch last night because they got other things to do.
Sure.
So they really don't care what happened.
Yeah, but they're going to see TikTok. There's already
That's right.
TikToks out there of President Biden just blinking.
Yes, yes,
If you're of a certain age, you probably watched John Oliver or you're watching John
yes,
Stewart, and
yes.
there's no shining this bowling ball up to make it look like it was okay.
Okay.
Uh,
So let's wrap up with this one. So say you had a debate team that did as poorly as Biden did last night. And then they have to prepare for another debate, just as Biden has to prepare for the second debate in September on ABC. Now, they both have said that they're going to participate. I thought after this victory last night, I thought Trump was just going to say, I don't need to do this anymore. Why do I need to get out there and, sit and, but Biden needs the second debate in order to sort of resurrect
right the
himself
ship.
or redeem himself. So talk to me about what kind of pep talk you'd be giving to your debaters to prepare for the next debate.
Working with students is very complicated, it's very tricky. And one of the things we try to coach is resilience. And they hate it when I talk to them about resilience. But sometimes a student will underperform. And the first thing is they're going to have to feel their feelings. And then the conversation that we're going to have, because the tournament's on a Saturday, then we're going to talk on Monday. And the question I have for them is, did you hate it? I felt like you hated it. Did you hate? I hated it. Did you hate it too? Yes. All right. Let's throw that all away. That's over. That's done with. That cannot be redeemed. That cannot be resurrected. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to focus forward. We have a debate coming on Saturday. We've got 5 days to prepare. How much effort are you willing to put in? Because I'm going to match your effort. And if you want to go and you want to finish better next week than you finished, if you went 1-3 yesterday, 0-4 on Saturday, and you want to go 3-1 or 4-0 next week, we know what we need to do. We got to work. All right, we have to prepare. We have to drill. When President Biden is getting ready for a debate, he might not have the questions in front of him, but he knows what questions he's going to get asked.
Exactly.
They get asked the same questions every time. He can have a 2-minute canned, prepared, memorized speech. Okay. It's got to be something. I know they can't take notes with them. Whatever mnemonic device they need, they just begin drilling that into him. Memorize this. If his retort is this, we're going to grab onto this one word and you're going to talk about this. And these are the 4 things you're going to talk about tonight. If they ask a question outside of that, be like, you know what, I actually want to go back and talk about abortion. I want to go back and talk about how we are supporting our allies in Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. Whatever it happens to be, President Biden needs to be better memorized, better prepared. Again, his presentation could be better. His voice needs to be stronger and louder. I don't know if he needs a shot of testosterone or B12 or whatever it is, but he's just got to have more oomph.
Yeah.
And he's got to appear sharper and crisper in his delivery, or else he's going to lose more voters
And
next
I
debate.
think one of the mistakes the Biden team campaign made was not insisting on having opening statements, because I think that would have given Biden, who has, he's always had a speech impediment and he's sort of overcome that, but that would have given him time to frame, his argument, to create his demeanor. It would have given him the opportunity to sort of engage his brain. I
Sure.
think when he was hit with that first question, I don't think his brain was engaged yet, because as he walked onto the stage, if you notice, he pointed to the lectern to say, "Is that mine?" So I sort of got the sense that he was not yet ready, and then he's hit with that first question, and he froze.
Listen, maybe he was not prepared. maybe he was watching the U.S. men's national team, which was also playing in Atlanta just a
Mhm.
few hours before, and maybe he was still bummed over the 2-1 loss to Panama. I don't know. Maybe he was taking a nap. But if you cannot be prepared for the first of two debates at 9 o'clock Eastern, I'm gonna tell you, like I don't know what his bedtime is. Maybe it's late for for Grandpa Joe. I don't know, but I really hope that he will be more prepared than that.
So, in your experience, after a team has been drubbed to the extent Biden was last night, how difficult is it to come back?
There's two ways to look at it, right? In the one sense, after yesterday's performance, almost any performance in the next debate is bound to be better. Like we have seen what I would suspect to be is the bottom of the barrel of President Biden. I think next month, if he's not sick right before, what's the next one is in August or September?
September.
September. All right, so he's got 2 months to prepare, three
Right.
months to prepare.
Yes. Yes.
And if he's not sick right before it, if he has taken some lessons from this, he can absolutely do better. The key is your mentality. You've got to have a short memory. Forget the last round. Forget the last tournament. Focus on the task at hand. And what I tell them before every round, like, hey, I don't care what you do for the rest of the day today, but I want you to win this round. I want you to go in there today, face off against that person, and out debate them. If you're giving a speech, I want you to give the best speech that you have ever given right now. This round right here. We're going to worry about the rest of the day later, but win this round right here, win this contention, win this point. But again, it's easier when you're talking to high schoolers who can hyper focus for 45 minutes and then take a break. It's a little bit harder when you're the president of the United States, and it's not like he's getting a break for the next 2-3 months. He's
Right.
still dealing with all the things that the president has to deal with.
So, before the debate began, what were your expectations?
I expected State of the Union Biden, and I
Yeah.
expected more or less the Trump that we saw yesterday. I felt President Trump did fine. Again,
Mhm.
he had some humor. He mocked President Biden at times, which was absolutely going to happen. He had some of his world famous hyperbole.
Right.
He had some opportunities to use facts in his favor, and he did that well. He had times to use lies in his favor, and he did that well. Again, it was a typical Trump performance, but we've seen President Biden do much better against Trump on stage before, and I expected a better Biden. I think a Biden who doesn't blank on the first answer, who doesn't lose his train of thought, who doesn't talk about
Yes.
beating Medicaid,
Yes. Yeah.
is an absolute possibility for the next debate. And like you said, if I'm President Trump, unless I am so overconfident that this octogenarian is not going to beat you, I'm not sure that I would do another debate. But as it happens, I suspect the second debate will happen, and President Biden has an opportunity for redemption.
Yeah. I think Trump's ego will not let him, bail.
It's
Because
an
I
incredible
think,
asset for him, and it's also a downfall for him.
yeah, I think he wants the knockout punch. And I think he thinks that come September in the next second debate, he'll just, grind Biden into the ground and that'll be it.
If I'm Trump's team, what I'm telling him is the next time he has a mental lapse in front of you, you just point at him and you say, "This is who's going to lead. They're going to be the leader
Right.
of the free
Right.
world." You
Right.
think that this man is ready to deal with Putin and Xi
Yeah.
and Hamas? This is the person that you see in front of you? And I think that would have a very frightening impact on a certain portion of the electorate. And again, it's a portion of the electorate that President Trump desperately needs if he's going to win.
Well, Sharif, this has been fascinating. Thank you. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your knowledge and sort of giving us this frame of reference as to how to watch this. I hope we can come back to you for the second debate and do the same thing, because this is really something different. I used to have, there was the debate head of the debate team at Youngstown State, Dr. Robinson, for a long time. And when I was covering politics, after these debates, not only the presidential debates or the gubernatorial debates and senatorial debates, he would be my go-to person, and he would sort of give me the his evaluation of how the debate went. So, I missed that, and I'm glad I found you, and I'm glad your colleagues recommended you.
Well,
Thank
thank you so much. It was a privilege to be here.
you.
I would love to do this again.
Wonderful.
It was an enjoyable conversation. I can't believe we've already had 15 minutes passing.
Yes.
And yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.